morning, everyone. Good morning. Today we are starting off our day with our community candidate here that's running for City Council District 8. So I'm going to have him to introduce himself and what core values and lived experiences he would like to bring.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Bob Murrell. I have been living in this city for quite a while. I was born at Charity Hospital 40 years ago. I grew up being public schooled and graduated from Riverdale High School. Um, I have been in the working class my whole life. My mom was a union teacher's assistant, and my dad has been a blue collar worker as long as I've been alive. And, through that experience, obviously, we were renters. I'm still a renter. I've always had to sell my labor in order to, feed myself and take care of my family. I don't own property. I don't even own a car. My wife owns our family car. I bike and scoot and take public transit. I've been in the software industry for the last 15 years after I got out of college. Most of that time I was a senior engineer where I'd be a team lead or a scrum master where I'd facilitate meetings. I would work with other workers to try to work through their issues. And I've been a project manager for the last 3 years, which has been quite a shift for me because now I'm in a full-time leadership position where I'm working with stakeholders, users of our software all over the world, as well as continuing working with workers to try to make sure that they're able to do what they need to do to be in a position to succeed and to make sure that we're able to take care of average, everyday people that are just asking for the services that they paid for, which I think is quite the skill to have in City Hall, for sure. When it comes to my values, I like to think of myself as, by the people and for the people. I believe in an egalitarian society where everyone is able to be taken care of, that we are able to not have to fight to survive, whether that's through housing or feeding ourselves or staying cool in this oppressive heat, and fighting exploitation, whether that's in the workplace or schools or neighborhoods. I believe in a fair, equal, equitable society, and that's really what drives me as a parent and as a community organizer, is making sure that people that aren't able to step up into these fights, that have to take care of parents or children that have several jobs, being able to elevate their voice in spaces that they're not able to be in. I like to afford whatever privilege I have to continue that fight. And, I think I've been doing that for close to 5 years now, 6 years, and it's, freedom is a constant struggle. So I'm always out there.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to get right into it. Housing and STRs. Whole home commercial STRs enact enforcement, shrink long term housing, and raise rent. Do you support banning whole home commercial STRs and standing up a city rental registry with fair rules for true resident hosted rentals? What's your enforcement plan and timeline for locals?
Yeah, that's all great. So yes, I absolutely support banning whole home rentals as well as commercial short-term rentals. It's been on my platform actually since 4 years ago when short-term rentals were just starting to tear the fabric of our communities. So I'm absolutely in favor of that. Obviously, enforcement is such a key issue, right? We have several million of dollars already collected from taxing short-term rentals that are not being used in enforcement. But one of the things that I think makes the enforcement issue so tricky is the complexity of the regulations that we have, not with whole home short-term rentals, but with properties where the owner actually lives on property, right? In an ideal world, I love us to not have short-term rentals. I'm a full supporter of a rental registry, and I feel like that's kind of the vessel to move people away from these for-profit platforms to a municipally owned public service, right? That if you need housing, look, Craigslist is hard, man. I remember this is before Facebook, where you try to find rentals on Facebook. Like, it's hard to find a good, healthy place to live that's affordable. And I think it's important for us as a city to know that there's a lot of housing units available that are sitting empty, waiting for tourists to come spend a weekend here, right? While we still have hundreds of people living in the streets. thousands of people that are behind on rent and facing eviction court. Those are parents, those are kids, those are grandparents. Why are we not prioritizing the people that want to live here, that work here, that have grown up here, to make sure that they are in comfortable, stable housing? So I definitely support a rental registry. I feel like removing the profit incentive from short-term rentals, eventually we could get to a full ban, and that makes enforcement so much easier. Because if that person ain't living there, if that's a tourist that's here on a short term, making sure that we're able to see, like, okay, this is prioritizing people first, which again is kind of my slogan, but also my motto. And I feel like enforcement is going to be significantly streamlined the more we're able to put in more practical bans on the process.
Thank you. Anisha?
Okay, and anti-displacement tools. Name your top 2 concrete actions to keep neighbors in their homes, such as inclusionary zoning, relief for legacy homeowners, support for community land trusts, social housing, pre-eviction rental assistance, all examples of potential actions. How will you fund them and measure success so District A families aren't priced out?
Yeah, those are all great questions. So one of the things that I think is important is that we're utilizing the Housing Trust Fund to keep people housed, right? So not only is it about developing new units, but it's also making sure that residents that are struggling are able to stay there. So one of the things that we need to make sure is if there are renters that are getting close to facing eviction, that we're able to give rental assistance before they get evicted. Right now, a lot of the rental assistance programs require you to have been served an eviction notice. We shouldn't have to get people caught up in the judicial system just because they're a little bit behind on rent, and to make sure that we're able to get them in a stable housing situation before we even get the courts involved. So that's one of the first things I want to do, is make sure that we're utilizing the Housing Trust Fund to support people that are struggling for housing before they reach that point of being served eviction. Secondarily, I'm so glad y'all brought up social housing. One of the things that I really want to look forward to is, again, removing the profit incentive from housing. I feel like commodified housing has really destroyed the affordability in this city. So I want us to explore looking into municipal banking. This is a sort of revolutionary practice where we have banks that are created solely for the purpose of developing city services. So one of those things could be an investment in developing social housing. There are hundreds of empty lots in District A right now. People squatting on property, waiting for the market value to go up. We can look into either purchasing those or using eminent domain and start developing social housing that is owned by the community, right? So again, developing community land trusts where people in the neighborhood have an actual physical share in the space that they live in. And maybe they want to develop housing, or maybe they want to develop other things like community gardens or solar farms, so that way if the power's going out, you have kind of a microgrid situation. But ultimately, at the end of the day, making sure that we're not just utilizing the Housing Trust Fund, but also able to get large nonprofits that own massive amounts of footprints that do not contribute to property taxes, having some ability to raise money from them so that they're paying their fair share, and we're able to make sure that this is a city that people can afford to live in and live in safe spaces.
Can I ask, so you mentioned empty lots, like blighted property, the eminent domain. What do you think is what has historically kept the city from doing that, and what would be different?
On a more political and socioeconomic level, I think that a lot of the people that own these properties own lots of properties, right? And so you're dealing with sort of this ownership class within the city that has legal protections, right? That are designed to protect them as property owners rather than just everyday citizens that are looking for a place to live, right? I live in Lakeview for the last 12, 13 years, and there's lots of lots across the city that never recovered after Katrina, right? Once they were demolished, they just kind of sat there. We saw a big spike in development where neighbors would buy the lot next door to them. So we had these huge footprints that are coming up. So when we talk about things like inclusionary zoning versus exclusionary zoning, one of the movements that happened over the last 4 years has been having parking minimums placed as kind of a way to combat the doubles to dorms issue in the Carrollton area. But as a result of that, it's prevented affordable housing development in Holly Grove, right? Because you're trying to build multifamily housing, you're trying to increase zoning density, And as a result of that, by including all of these parking requirements, so, you have 3 bedrooms plus a living room plus an extra space. So that's really 5. So now you need 4 parking spots. You either have to create off-street parking and take into the footprint, or you have to somehow get it on street parking. So it's kind of difficult to have a blanket statement, but when it comes to empty lot development, at the end of the day, is it people that are struggling to develop because of zoning issues, or is it because of people waiting to turn a profit on this empty lot situation? It's a mixed bag, but ultimately, going after the people that have empty lots that are blighted lots, like
Right.
overgrown, those are health hazards. And there was an issue in Lakeview. There was a house that was not maintained since Katrina. They had a pool, and it was collecting water, and it was a danger because it was breeding pests, but also there were small children that played around the area, so they had to fence it up, they had to cover it, and enforcement on it just did not work. Councilmember Geruso made a promise to have it happen and tried several different legal patterns to try to get this blighted, dangerous property taken care of, and it just could not happen. It wasn't until the neighbors had a Sweet 16 party and the news came that suddenly the heat was on that owner, and then they were finally able to destroy the whole property. So I think it just goes to show that once the community is able to have more ownership in the spaces that they occupy, rather than these absent landlords that are just squatting on property, that's when we start to see that there's more to it than just exclusionary zoning. So I don't know if I answered the question.
No,
or
that
not,
was helpful context.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I want to talk about the youth and how we plan to invest in our youth. Right now, we just see prisons and jails, and of course, we do not want all of our children housed. We don't want any of our children in the system. So we want to know how or what's your plan? How would you invest in the children? What specific moves will you make to expand safety, positive options for our youth? And when I say that, I mean for as connecting with NORD, connecting with community partners, discount transit, paid trade, schooling, all of that. What would be your plans as far as investing in our children?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's actually the primary plank of my platform is investing in our youth. I always say that they're the most blighted infrastructure in our city right now. It's taking care of not just kids, but really up till 25 years old.
Right.
And I think there, what is it? Idle minds make idle hands or whatever. Trying to give people the opportunity to safely explore themselves as people and develop into the next generation of New Orleanians. I think back to how much we talk about Trombone Shorty as being this icon of New Orleans, right? He was a kid who loved music. He was in a musical family, and he got out there and he was playing, right?
Right.
How many other Trombone Shorties are out there that are not given the opportunity? And I'm not saying he was privileged in the slightest, but his gifts elevated him to a point where you couldn't deny him, right? And there's so many other kids out there of all ages that don't have those opportunities. When I think about 14-year-old trumpet player, how does he get a gig? All the gigs are at bars that are 21 and up, and at night he's got to play in the school band pretty much, or try to start a side hustle where you're playing after school. I feel like if we really want to take an investment into youth, obviously NORD is a great foundational place to start, and expanding that programming beyond just our traditional way of thinking about NORD is really, I think, what we need to try to go for. Having municipal performance spaces and recreational spaces beyond just, basketball courts. When I think about, like you said, with transit, I would love to have free transit for any young people in this city. And to have that opportunity with an expanded transit system, not just in lines, because they consolidated all the transit lines. I ride the bus and I hate it. So I wish that we would go back to having expanded transit lines, having more buses. I spoke to an RTA worker the other day at DSA's brake light clinic, and he was like, yeah, we're learning on how to work on electric buses that can have charging stations, stuff like that. So RTA is clearly thinking ahead, and we need to make sure that the money is being invested into that. But that's just one part of it, right? Expanding the universal basic income program that the mayor had started as a pilot program, actually giving that dedicated funding from the general fund, I think is important. But at the end of the day, there are, I hate the term at-risk youth, but I feel like they're marginalized young people, right? They're not provided opportunities that fit to who they are as individuals.
Right.
And I really think that it comes from like a holistic approach with a lot of, these nonprofit organizations that are really deeply embedded in the community. And one of the things I want to bring about is participatory budgeting, where each city council district it's like $20 million or $12 million. And right now they just dole it out to whoever they want. I want an actual thorough process where if there are people in the community that say, like, I have a violence intervention program that I want to bring to this small, like, 8-block area that has a high propensity of gun violence. That is something that we should be supporting 100%. And not only is through the participatory budget process are you able to have people bring these proposals, you can start joining them together and making a much larger movement across the city. And then the voters get to actually decide where their money goes. That to me is the most powerful thing, is that we're just kind of given a budget and like you may get to go to a town hall, you may get to submit public comments, but there's no two-way street to this. It is very one-way. So I think opening up that and really democratizing the ability of our community to say, this is what we want, and we just need the resources to do it. I think that that's so impactful, and that could be done in the first year of office. I don't have to change the charter or anything like that. It would be just from the District A funding to start a pilot program for that. And I think that that's a great opportunity for us to genuinely invest in our young people.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anisha, thank you, man.
Public safety. So District A sees different safety issues, from gun violence hotspots to vehicle break-ins. Which community-led violence prevention programs, such as credible messengers, mentorship, neighborhood mediation, will you scale, and what metrics, such as shootings averted, program retention, or recidivism, will you use to prove impact?
So I've been in the software industry for a long time. I'm very data-driven. And for me, I think accountability starts with transparency. We can't hold any of the visions that we have accountable if we're not measuring that success. So for me, I think it's critical that any program that's receiving public dollars is able to report on not just an annual basis, but a recurring basis. I would ideally like monthly, quite honestly, and finding ways that we can plug in data to an automated system, so that way we can have live dashboards that people can monitor, are my dollars being spent correctly, and what are the results of that. There's a lot of very specific programs to list. I love Ubuntu Village and the programming that they provide. I've been a longtime supporter of Piece by Piece NOLA, which does a lot of outstanding work in the Holly Grove area with young people and students at Xavier, where they not only install community gardens and community fridges, they're actively growing food and they're feeding their neighborhood, but they also do educational events with the young people. Sometimes even political education, which I think is pretty critical for young people to understand their role in our society is not just as a consumer or as a worker, but as a citizen, and finding ways to serve your community, whether that's giving them heads of lettuce that you personally planted, or if it's just cleaning up the neighborhood. I think there's so many different small organizations that are doing such great work that aren't heard. And again, trying to, number one, fund them and make sure that they're able to continue to do that service. And number two, making sure that we're able to actively report on their progress, so that we're showing the people that your money's being well spent. And maybe if you had more money, we could scale up even more to help even more people.
Thank you. Let's get into mental health and addictions. Will you commit to 9 police crisis to have those teams, right? City-supported clinics and an overdose prevention pilot as part of a harm reduction approach? And if so, how would you have your staff to support that, to fund this prevention, I'll say crisis team, and to create more services so people could get the help early on before jail becomes an issue?
Yeah, those are all outstanding questions. So yes, I 100% commit to that. I was a supporter of the Help Not Handcuffs campaign that was started back, was that 2020 maybe? 2021. That was with the Orleans Parish Prison Reform Coalition, and I was very happy to knock on doors and tell people about it because it's a very popular program. It just makes sense to not have to send people with guns to respond to a crisis that doesn't need guns. And more importantly, to make sure that we don't even have to get them into the criminal justice system at all with arrests, with detainments, with any of that. I think providing people help that need help is at the end of the day what we want to do. So I definitely believe in having a fully funded program that responds to these mental health crises events. Obviously, the work with 311 and the existing program, it's there, but it could obviously stand room for improvement. So I believe that right now, NOPD currently has a budget surplus. They haven't been, according to their numbers, staffed enough. So they've had an excess of budget spending that's been sitting there. So I would love to see that being moved towards non-police staffing. They call it civilianization, but for me, it's all the same thing. It's making sure that we have people that aren't armed agents of the state being able to provide safety for our general public. I also think we need to dramatically expand the health department. When you look at the job development that happens in New Orleans, our health sector is one of the most robust and flourishing sectors of the private industry right now. Healthcare is something that we clearly know how to create, but we don't know how to distribute it back to our own people. And so I want to make sure that we expand our health department. We're bringing in more clinicians and, whether that's registered nurses or CNAs or any number of social workers, try to bring them in so that they're able to get livable wages with union representation, that we are able to go out into neighborhoods that have disproportionately lower life expectancy rates and try to provide preventative care as best as we can, whether that means we're starting new clinics or maybe that's just going to existing government facilities like libraries or firehouses for just a week and saying, hey, we're going to be here during these hours to provide, blood pressure readings and check your medicine and things like that. But obviously when it comes to the mental health crises that we've been feeling over the last, decade plus, these are large systemic problems that are happening nationwide. I can certainly get on my soapbox and blame it on capitalism or blame it on individualism, but ultimately we need to take care of each other. We've lost that sense of community that looks after one another. And I think when we start to really rebuild the grassroots that used to exist in this city, that's when we start to rebuild community and looking after one another, where neighbors actually know their other neighbors. And if someone's, having an incident, not to call the cops, but rather, I need to call, a family member of theirs that I know that went to go get groceries and that's why they're freaking out, or having some other issue with substance abuse and making sure I think they may be relapsing or having some more issues, and trying to not only get them the help that they need but trying to find safe use spaces as well. I've seen a lot of successful pilot programs that are happening across the country and obviously internationally as well that are really focused again on taking care of people if they feel like they need to use, to make sure it's in a monitored, safe space so that way they're not going to overdose, they're not going to have bad reactions, and really trying to make sure that we're also using it as public education on how to take care of yourselves and your people. I love the work that Tristerio does with their kits that they provide for people, just so that way if you know someone that's having an overdose, you are able to be equipped with saving their life. I don't think that people need to lose their life because of whatever circumstances they're going under. And, substance use is something that is, we're New Orleans where we drink out in the open at 11 o'clock, There are certain stigmas of using certain substances, but I think we need to treat them equally and understand that at the end of the day, people are trying to take care of themselves, but they can't do it alone, and we really need to step up for each other.
Thank you.
So after last year's watered-down peace statement, should the council use its platform to take clear stands on international human rights, such as the Gaza genocide or ceasefire resolution? Would you also commit to protecting free speech in city spaces and contracts? No viewpoint-based retaliation or vendor blacklists, while creating spaces for dialogue and safety for Jewish, Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian neighbors in District A?
Yes. Great question. A lot to unpack, but I'll try my best. So I signed on to the People's Ceasefire Resolution, and I was in City Council chambers when the Statement for Peace was adopted, excuse me, and I was outside afterwards in protest with so many others, demanding that, we live in a functioning democracy, not just a democracy on paper. I've always, through the current genocide that's happening, have always tried to use whatever platform I have to uplift the plight of the Palestinian people, to call for an end to sending armaments to Israel, making sure that we protect American citizens that are on the West Bank, that are not necessarily directly being under this siege, but are still being detained, still being killed, including New Orleans residents. So I think it's important that we speak out for injustice wherever it happens, because eventually it'll come back to us. And I remember my statement during that city council session. I quoted Sidney Bartholomew's statement from the dais, from City Hall, saying the exact same thing. Apartheid is not something that represents New Orleans values. That was about South Africa, and it was about white colonial efforts in a predominantly black area. So I understand that the sentiment is very specific to the plight of a black city like New Orleans, but they were able to divest from South African banks. They were able to unequivocally state that they support human rights and they are against human rights violations. This is not new. Even this city council spoke against the war in Ukraine and human rights violations that were happening. So I think that there's a certain double standard that has been applied, and if we really want to speak to our values the way that they claim they are, I think it should be applicable to all people, regardless of skin color, religion, or ethnicity and nationality. Obviously, I have a lot of supporters that are members of Jewish Voices of Peace. I actually had a volunteer who had another candidate have their sign placed on there, and he didn't realize that she was a member of the ADL and asked for it to be removed, because speaking out in criticism of the state of Israel is not anti-Semitism, and as a Jewish person, he felt that it was insulting, so he was like, yeah, give me one of your signs, I want to put that out there. But at the end of the day, we must be intolerant of intolerance, and I feel like a lot of the sentiment against the organizing for Palestinian rights comes from a place of self-preservation that should not be at the expense of others. And if we want to really champion human rights, if we want to champion anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and any type of racism, that we need to do so unequivocally and universally.
Thoroughly covered that. Nice.
All right.
I'm going to skip around, right? Because I want to dive more into home rule and open government.
Sure.
So if Baton Rouge tries to come at New Orleans again, right? What's your playbook for us to defend home rule? And locally, what are your concrete commitments on participatory budgeting, I'll say, open contracts, and real-time public dashboards so residents can track promises to results?
Yeah. So when it comes to the fight against Baton Rouge, it's a fight that we've continuously had.
Right.
And I know a lot of people talk about, we have to have strong partnerships in the state house and the state legislature. That's a given, right? That's the baseline.
Right.
What we move is beyond that, because we've seen Jeff Landry flout ethics laws already. Like, he's already pushing against it. We saw the state police get away with murdering Ronald Green. We've seen that they're trying to get rid of the consent decrees for not just NOPD, but also the sheriff's office. Time and time again, they're going to keep pushing the lines of what is considered to be lawful. And if it's not lawful, they'll just do it anyway, because they also control the courts. So what we need to do is, number one, try to find our self-sufficiency. Right now, we have so much wealth in this city that is not being put into public services, but as I said, is going to private contractors. And those private contractors, more often than not, are donating to Republican candidates on the state level. I'm not trying to say that we need to have some sort of retaliatory relationship, because that's not what I'm asking, but instead we need to make sure that we're able to use public dollars for public services. Neoliberalism is bipartisan, right? Even though it was brought into prominence by Reagan, Bill Clinton was the one that really made it expand. And we've seen in New Orleans since the 80s the gutting of public services in favor of private contracts, whether that's sanitation, whether that's road work, whether we're talking about inspections and safety permits. ultimately we need to restore what our public good and public services are, and so I believe that we need to definitely like dramatically expand our city workforce. I would love to have like a jobs corps program to target all of these different crises that we have, and as we're able to bring that back into the city, now we have more oversight that we can apply to making sure that people are able to get what they're paying for, right? So you can call hearings, you can call in all these different departments to have in one space available to the public where they can comment, the ability to hear report backs, to really dig down and inquire about what's going on with this one specific project, why hasn't it moved? And you can find that out rather than having to email someone who's going to forward that over, and you might get a postcard back in the mail. Obviously, I talked about participatory budgeting earlier and its importance of really empowering people to feel like they're a part of the process because they're able to see where their money's going, right? If I was an advocate for building a park by my house and I went through this whole process of getting it funded and it's not getting funded, I would probably be more inclined to fight for it and make sure that there's progress than someone who may have, anecdotally heard about the project. I didn't really touch too much though on pushing back on Baton Rouge, but I think ultimately, in order to preserve our home rule charter and our ability to be, for lack of a better word, sovereign, we need to find ways to move away from our dependency on state funding, on federal funding, as well as making sure that we're not having to allow Baton Rouge to intercede. So there are, whether or not there are like actual paper documents like cooperative endeavor agreements or memorandums of understanding, if there are those agreements, you can amend them or you can cancel them. And if they don't exist, then you can start to create new ones and make sure that you're restricting their use. I think about the Real-Time Crime Center and the push for live facial recognition across our city right now. I had a little bit of pushback with Verite News on this because I said that, they are cooperating with ICE. And he's like, I can't find any evidence of it. And then the person who runs the Real-Time Crime Center is on a podcast talking about how Department of Homeland Security is embedded into the Real-Time Crime Center. So that relationship already exists. It has existed. The January 1st attack was kind of the way to introduce all this as sort of a new narrative of we need this tool, and then obviously the Super Bowl allowed for a lot of massive oversight from the federal and the state government to come in and really start utilizing these tools. If we don't set firm boundaries or just straight up ban the use of these technologies, there's no stopping them from using it for whatever purposes that they want. And that's what I talk about when we can't give ground to the right, the extreme right, that is in control of state power and in control of federal power. If we don't make ourselves able to self-sustain ourselves and to actively push back, then yeah, it's a matter of time before they take over. And we can't have that.
Thank you.
So criminal justice oversight. City dollars must buy transparency and humane conditions at OJC. Will you tie funding to public dashboards such as staffing, healthcare access, incidents, programming, and independent audits, and oppose costly expansions that don't improve safety or care? How will you align spending with measurable outcomes?
Yeah, so obviously the Sheriff's Department has their own ability to collect sales tax, property taxes, so they do have millages. But they do also get general funding from the city. So yeah, I'm absolutely in support of making sure that any department that is getting a significant portion of the budget, whether that's NOPD, whether that's Public Works, Sewage and Water Board, or even the Sheriff's Department, that we are able to see that they are, number one, in compliance with what they're claiming they need funding for. Like I said, with NOPD, they ask for funding for X amount of staff, but if they don't even fill that much staff, where's that other money going, right? So we got to make sure that we're correctly funding our departments, and that requires us to continually monitor the budget process. Right now, we don't really get into budget season until the mayor starts collecting all the different departments' budgetary requests. I would like to see that as a year-long process where we're able to do monthly check-ins with departments to see how are you in line with spending? Are you going over? Then we got to pull you back in. Are you not adequately there? If you're not going to fill it, or if you don't need it anymore, how can we move those dollars to a department that does need it? Number two, again, with accountability, doesn't matter if you don't have a way to measure it. So transparency and having that data-driven mindset, I think, is critical for us moving forward. We have the means and we have the tools, we just don't have the political will to plug in the wires. But I think most important when it comes to criminal justice oversight, number one, we are over the legal limit on capacity at OJC. We have been for almost 22 months now. Why is it that the people inside the jail have to follow the law, but not the people that run the jail or the people that oversee the jail? So we need to make sure that if we're going to have compliance, that it requires all the partners in the criminal justice system. The judges need to get on board in finding ways to reduce how many people that they are actually putting in the jail. We need to work with the sheriff's office to see how many of those people can be released or transferred to not prisons, but other facilities that halfway homes and things like that, and also finding ways to reduce how many of these violations we can actually get rid of that are just being tacked on. I'm sure you all know, but like when a police interacts with someone, they're looking for as many items that they can get a conviction on, right? Because their job is to fill the jail. And if we're able to give them less to work with in terms of ticky-tacky violations that they can get you on, then I think that allows us the opportunity to have less people even approaching the system, much less getting put into the system. And I will say this, when it comes to people that are on release, just going back to the Real-Time Crime Center, they are using L-shape detection to see if there are people that are on bail or have felony convictions, to see if they have guns on them so that they can send a cop back over and put them right back in the jail, right? That's a proactive approach to refilling the jail that I think we need to move away from, because although we're trying to reduce gun violence, at the same time we need to give people equal access to existing in our city. People do have Second Amendment rights. There is no concealed carry anymore in Louisiana, so that should be applied to everybody and not just to white people or people that haven't been arrested before. But back to the funding, I think ultimately we need to make sure that our dollars are being spent the way they're supposed to be, and that comes with accountability and oversight that needs to happen ongoing rather than just 2 months out of the year.
Okay. I'm gonna speak on behalf of our neighbors in Lakeview, Mid City, and Holly Grove. Folks just want the basics, right? Streets whereby they're not gonna be rolling over big potholes, damaging their cars. They would like lighting, trash, maybe trash pickup twice a week. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Those are the basics that our community folks are asking for. What are your plans to coordinate projects, publish neighborhood level schedules, hold contractors to performance scorecards, and build in-house capacity so work finishes actually the work could start and actually finish, right? Completed, just to be a part of, like, we want to make sure our things are taken care of, right? And how can you include that in the budget?
Yeah. So one of the things that I talk about a lot since I ran for this seat 4 years ago is that you shouldn't have to go to City Hall to talk to your council representation, right?
Right.
Obviously, we've had a very responsive member in City Council who responds to emails, responds to social media, but it often feels like frontline customer support, right? It doesn't feel like a leader or a representative. And one of the things I talk about is that we shouldn't be begging for help from one elected official to be our savior to get this street fixed, right? Mm-hmm. We need to be empowering our neighbors so that way, number one, they're informed regularly. So I've always spoken about the need for having remote office work. I want to be embedded in the city, not just on a fixed schedule, but like proactively. I don't like commuting downtown, y'all. I don't like it. I want to be uptown. I want to be in Mid-City. I want to be in the fairgrounds. I want to be amongst the people, whether that's me working at a coffee shop like I have been doing since COVID, or setting up in community centers or even in schools. I feel like the connection that we have is how we're able to hold each other accountable. So when it comes to road work construction right now, the only opportunity you have to like directly communicate with the people doing the work is a project manager's phone number. I'm a project manager by trade, and I can tell you right now, yeah, that's great. But project managers are constantly working on status and coordination. They're constantly doing it. But if we only have it in private contractors, their own little bubbles, they're not communicating amongst one another. Department of Public Works has all of that data reportable, and they use a system. The software vendor that they use now, I'm not sure it's the same, but they have a vendor that uses the ability to have dashboards, the ability to actively report on status of projects. And the reason why they do that is because you need that citywide level of coordination to make sure if I'm doing a roadwork project here and then I have one scheduled in like a couple of months, how do we shift those around so that way we only have to do one dig? It's more efficient, it's less money, and most importantly, it's less headaches for all the people that live around these neighborhoods. So trying to bring in that level of coordination of projects, I think, is critical. And as a project manager, like I said, if I have to do the work myself as a project manager to make sure all of those projects are reporting into the system and are able to be viewed and easily accessed by residents is critical to me. Number two is making sure that we're not just going to neighborhood associations every month in all these different neighborhoods. We need to be deeply embedded in the community. We need to be trying to work with grassroots organizing, whether it's me starting it with district councils, or whether we're working with existing groups that are already in these communities, and making sure that they are able to, number one, have that relationship with the district council office to be kept up to date, but also for them to communicate their own needs, their own updates, almost acting as like an informational hub to keep constituents all updated and informed, not just getting an email every month or so from a mail list that you have to subscribe to, right? As a grassroots organizer, I know how hard it is to communicate with neighbors. So you have to meet them where they're at. You have to knock on their doors. You have to call and text them. You have to write letters. You have to show up at their workplaces. And that to me is something that I'm up for the task. I love getting out in the community and talking to people about what they need and what they want to see. Most importantly, just building that rapport is something that works. So when it comes to things like road work, we need to make sure that people are active participants and stakeholders in the work that's happening, so that they're being informed by whoever's doing the contract work, that city council is able to oversee how that progress is going and communicating it, and going the other way around too. If there's an issue where they're taking too long, how do we resolve that? We can't just keep punting the ball. I would love to see Department of Public Works expanded to where we have more road construction services back under municipal control. So like you said, if there's something that's a simple fix and we're just waiting on the right equipment or enough labor or supplies, we shouldn't have to wait on a contractor to do that work if we're able to do it in-house. And when it comes to garbage collection, I talked about it 4 years ago. We just doubled the rate that we pay for garbage collection when we allowed it to go from 2 weeks to one, but the rate was the same. We used to have a robust sanitation department here in this city. And those are people that are getting paid livable wages. Those are people that can get union representation. When the hoppers went on strike for Metro Waste, I was a big supporter of theirs, because that was where you start to see this use of private contracts where you're not able to hold them accountable to paying livable wages to people, to make sure that they're having safe working conditions. The trucks were spraying stuff that would like burn their skin from the hydraulic pumps, right? And they wouldn't take that money to repair or upgrade their vehicles. If we're able to do that on a municipal level, again, we're able to fill in the gaps and ideally bring it all back into the city services so that people are paying for actually getting what they pay for, that we're able to take care of workers. But ultimately, it comes down to coordination and making sure that people are in the loop. They are the key stakeholders and not public or private contracts.
On the subject of infrastructure, let's talk a little bit about drainage and flooding. So, as you know, Lakeview, Mid-City, Carrollton, and Bayou St. John still flood in routine storms. What are your first-year commitments to deliver a reliability plan for Pump Station 6, Carrollton plant, such as backup power, maintenance deadlines, public dashboards, and B, block-by-block green drainage near City Park Fairgrounds that cuts flooding without pricing neighbors out?
Yeah. So there was a proposal that was made to have a lot more stormwater retention in City Park, both as just regular green-blue infrastructure, but also as recreation, to have the ability to take in water from the Lake Vista area and have these culverts that go underneath Allen Toussaint and drain into the park. There was very poor coordination that happened on that front. They did not get the buy-in from any of the neighbors that were going to be impacted by construction, but most of the buy-in was from the people on the other side of Allen Toussaint who were the ones getting flooded, right? So we start to see this sort of, I hate to call it, but like tribalism, where we have people that are very protective of their space and they almost feel like they're in competition. I'm all about collaboration and cooperation, not competition. And so I think for us, there's a lot of shared experiences that people have across this city where one neighborhood feels like they're not getting taken care of over the other. So I want to make sure that we're able to cut through that and trying to get people bought into these processes well before we get into the public comment phase. Obviously, I want to dramatically expand water retention, whether we're talking about expanding rain barrel programs to have free giveaways and try to have gutter installations done, because those are kind of necessary to have rain barrels. I want to start having zoning requirements for large construction projects to have water retention built in. When we talk about the use of unpermeable concrete in a lot of these construction projects, it's literally just runoff. All the water goes straight into the system, and that puts a strain, like you said, on those pumps, like pump 6. And it's important for us to make sure that, number one, if we're building new projects that are going to be large, that they're not contributing to drainage issues, but they're actually helping with the drainage issues. So the more we're able to keep water out of the street for flooding, the better. When it comes to the existing infrastructure, no one's ever really gone deep into what it would take to replace all the pumps, to replace all the antiquated systems that have been around for sometimes over a century. And I think the last time I saw one, it was like billions and billions of dollars, which we're not going to get. Like, it would take a very large social revolution for us to actually get the things that we need, and I don't see that happening with Landry and Trump in office. So what instead we should be doing is focusing on augmenting our gray infrastructure. So again, like making sure that we have water retention projects, but also we need to regulate Entergy to make sure that they're actually going to create the power stations that they need for these pumps to be reliable, to have an energy grid that's resilient enough to where the pumps don't turn off because the power flickers, right? And ultimately, we shouldn't be shouldering the cost of that through Entergy, who is privately run and is able to have profits guaranteed for them. But instead, they are doing this as a service because they can't run if our city's underwater, right? So ultimately, we need to find ways to really utilize all the tools on City Council's tool belt, whether that's with funding, whether that's with regulation and oversight, or just working with our community to make sure that we are able to actively respond to flooding events, that we're able to get people prepared before these storms start to come through. Obviously, we deal with tropical weather systems, but when we're just dealing with one day it's sunny and the next day it's flooding, it's a challenge, right? And we need to make sure that we're able to keep up with the ever-increasing climate crisis and rapid developing storms, and that, again, comes to communication and make sure that, we're able to effectively communicate to people, hey, there's probably going to be flooding happening soon, so get ready for it, not getting the text after it's already storming saying, oh, you can park on the neutral ground now. That's not helpful, and we need to be more proactive. But ultimately, if we're working from the ground up rather than the top down, that's when we're able to get people more informed.
So you brought up Entergy, and Entergy outages, along with that sewage and water board failures that hit District A hard. What would be some concrete actions you could do to actually hold the utility accountable? Audit tied rate cases, penalties for reliability misses. You mentioned that they get all of the the profit and privilege and I guess benefits of operating here, but not the accountability piece. So what would you do to put that in place? And then additionally, to lower the bills and improve resilience. Like we're already seeing with Meta, bills are going to go up.
Right.
So yeah, speak on that if you would.
Yeah, I will give you a a use case that is currently happening right now. So Entergy has been trying to push a rate increase through City Council, and City Council has naturally been sort of apprehensive to do that. There was recently a settlement from them not being able to consistently provide power. So it's part of the standards that we hold for Entergy for oversight. So they were fined for this, and as that settlement, they're trying to use the settlement to pay for the rate increase. So they're just giving the money back to Entergy, and that would pay itself for 1 year, and then our bills would go up a year later, right? So that's a firm example of the way that Entergy games the system to its own benefit. Their CEO is out attending meet and greets and fundraisers for people running for city council. Even though city council passed regulations saying you can't take money from Entergy, they're finding ways to circumvent that, because ultimately the bottom line is what matters to them, not keeping the lights on here in New Orleans. I've been an organizer with the Democratic Socialists of America here in New Orleans, and one of the things that we've always advocated for is creating a municipalized power utility, right? Entergy has even offered this as a solution. There was a article they wrote in the Times-Picayune of like, look, we can stay and you won't be happy, we can leave, and either some other company's going to come in that you may not like, or the city could buy us. That sounds like a great opportunity if you ask me, so that way we don't have to play these games with people who are only interested in their shareholders making money, but that we can actually actively regulate it the same way cities across the country, including Lafayette, are able to have power utilities that are truly and genuinely a public service. How do we get there? Like you said, having audits tied to rate increase applications, I think, is critical. We should not be handing them money without making sure that they're doing what they're going to pay for, right? We have seen that their, I forget the financial term for it, but their payouts that they do for their shareholders, the dividends that they've had, have increased since COVID started. That's money that they're not paying into our infrastructure. They are paying it to shareholders who do not live here, who do not work here. That's like colonialism, if you ask me. Right. Like, they're extracting goods from us that we should be getting, and we're not. So as part of this campaign that DSA has been doing, it's called Make Entergy Pay. Number one, canceling all the debt that's accrued since the start of the pandemic. People are hurting. Debt has been increasing, not just in housing debt, but medical debt, student debt. So we need to try to help people. Number two, ban the use of residential shutoffs. This is something that city council does every once in a while. They're like, okay, it's getting too hot, you can't cut off people's power. Or, oh, it got too cold, you can't cut off people's power. You clearly know it's a safety issue to cut off people's power. Right. Why would you do it any time of the year? Whether it's your refrigerator running, whether it's your kid getting Wi-Fi so he could do his homework, whether it's someone being able to have their CPAP machine plugged in overnight. This is people's livelihoods, right, and we should never be cutting off power. Third thing is, yeah, exactly. And we know that their fair weather outages happen, so it's not even an issue of weather, right? It is clearly an investment choice that they made to not put it into our grid, not put it into our infrastructure, but instead to give it to their shareholders. It's corporate greed at its base, and no matter what neighborhood I'm in, people do not like Entergy, but they feel like they're handcuffed to it because it's a monopoly. They're guaranteed 9% profit, which they've been exceeding, by the way. And those are the issues where, like, city council needs to stop contracting it out to lawyers to give them advice on how to do it. How about you listen to the people that voted you into office? They don't want this anymore. Stop all rate increases, and if they're going to ask for money, they need to prove that they're actually paying it into hardening our grid, actually actively making our city more reliable. I do appreciate the weatherization program that they have to make sure that people's homes are properly insulated and are up to code. That should be something that they should be giving away for free, right? They shouldn't have to do rebate programs and things like that. They make so much money, y'all. It's billions of dollars in, I call it profits, but they call it excess revenue. And that's an example of a political choice that city council has made for decades to not proactively regulate. I refuse to allow Entergy to continue business as usual.
Thank you. Okay. Progressive in a moderate district. Mm-hmm. District 8 blends affluent, more centrist areas with working class progressive blocks. How will you build broad trust from Lakeview to Alderman to Mid-City and Highland Grove by delivering early wins. So name 3 near-term deliverables you'll pursue to speak to all sides while staying true to your values.
Thank you. That's a great question. Um, I don't like the use of the word compromise. I feel like a lot of people talk about compromise when they're dealing with differing political spectrums, right?
Right.
I think ultimately race and economic class are what undergird a lot of the issues here in New Orleans, and I think too many public officials and politicians try to skirt away from it, or they use it as a way to be divisive and to try to divide us, right? And we're starting to see that in the mayoral races, right? But at the end of the day, we have the haves and the have-nots, and so often the have-nots have been asking just for a little bit of help from the haves. There was an Urban League forum that I was on recently, and one of the other candidates was asked, do you think it's appropriate for someone in Lakeview to say that Holly Grove doesn't deserve to get political attention? And she said, I don't think that that's something that actually happens. And immediately you hear the groans and laughs, because it's very, like, I've heard from constituents in Lakeview that said, look, man, I think it's great that you have all this justice stuff, but like I just want my street fixed, right? So we're talking about material issues that need to be resolved beyond political issues. But those are political issues that drive the material reality that we live in. So for me, the very easy deliverables that we have, number one is making sure that people feel connected to the process. Whether that's through dashboards, whether that's through me having remote sessions regularly in the neighborhood, whether that's town halls. We don't have town halls unless it's election season. People need to have a voice to their representative and to the public frequently if we really want to have a democracy that functions. So you can count on me to be much more embedded into the community, to make sure that they're informed and start developing more grassroots organizing on a block by block level, so that we're able to respond to storms, that we're able to respond to delinquent properties, that we're able to respond to road work that's not being fixed, so that people don't feel like they're begging for information. If anything, they should feel like, oh yeah, I heard about that last week, right? They should feel informed. Public education and popular education is something that we desperately need in this city. And I, as a son of an educator, I try to continue that legacy of making sure that people feel informed as much as I feel informed. Number two is, like I said, making sure that we're able to start to finish these roadwork projects. So whether that's through the project management coordination that I spoke about earlier, and trying to get people like actual deadlines and actual information on why projects are being delayed. If it's an issue of paying people, then we need to make sure that we're using the power of the purse by city council to withhold funding from the mayor's office until they're able to start clearing these checks, right? It's been a long time issue with Gilbert Montano and Mayor Cantrell, where they're not paying settlements, they're not paying past due contracts out, and that's what's stalling a lot of these issues. So making sure that we're, as city council, we can't force people in city hall to pay money, but we can withhold funds, and that's one of the key powers of checks and balances of city council, not in an oppositional form, but making sure that we're able to have a functioning government that is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And lastly, I talk about this a lot, building community and building those block by block interventions. Neighbors don't really know each other anymore, and it's really sad. Whether that's because of short-term rentals or because of just people being isolated and alienated from the pandemic, and we haven't really, truly regained a lot of that ground. People feel more comfortable, typing on their phones than they do talking on their phones. People feel more inclined to be on Zoom than in person, and I understand that as a parent. Like, I have to, I have the monitor next to me for my 2-year-old son while I'm sitting on Zoom calls a lot of times. And it's important for us to find areas to be as accessible as possible, to meet people, like I said, where they exist. And if we're not able to bridge that gap, then to find ways to keep them informed, but also that they feel that they're able to inform me or city council in general. Obviously, like, those will start to materialize benefits as we start to bring people together, because I genuinely feel like sunlight disinfects the best, and the more people are able to see things and are able to apply their pressure properly, that's when you start to see things moving. It's not from City Hall, it's not from City Council, it's from the people. And if they make enough noise and the media gets involved or a social media post blows up, the more people start to know about things and feel informed and show their anger and are calling in and writing emails. Pressure campaigns do work up to a certain extent, but if it's sustained pressure and it's diverse in its pressure and how we're applying it to different points of pressure, that's when we start to see people power manifest. And it's not just at the ballot box, it has to be all the time.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
yeah, I know we're out of water.
Yeah, we're out of
But
water.
thank you for joining us. Do you have any final thoughts on what you'd like to leave with District A residents?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, I hope you support, Voters Organized to Educate. I think what y'all do is important. And for me, I think it's critical as a citizen. The reason why I even decided to start running for office was as a parent feeling like I wasn't being heard, right? I always tried to stay informed as much as I could. I helped write the DSA voter guides for many years, so learning about who's funding who and what endorsements are being passed around. There's a lot of noise, right? And cutting through the invented narratives to really find who these people are and who they are representing is critical for you as a voter to figure that out, right? So please stay informed. Listen to these podcasts or videos from other forums. It's a lot. Maybe you have to cut back on Netflix for a little bit, but it's worth it. It's worth it, y'all. I guarantee you. Find the people who you trust and listen to their voices. Listen to who they're talking about. You don't have to do exactly what they're doing because you probably have good friends that are voting for different people, and that's totally fine, right? But to feel that connection and not just it's a name on a ballot, but it's a human being. I know what they're standing for. They have tangible results. Who are they working with that gave them these ideas too? I think is really important. I'm not funded by any PACs or max donors. It's all grassroots funding. Our median donation is $25, but we have a lot of them, right? We have almost 150 donors. You look at my platform on my website. I built that website. I didn't hire someone to do it. So those are my words, right? It's not AI. It's not consultants. It's from me directly. And the platform that we put out was developed over the last 4 years from community organizers all across the city, advocates, working families, you name it. And I think it's important that these policies are not invented by me. I'm not some genius. I'm just someone who uplifts the work that's already happening, uplifts the ideas that have been worked on collaboratively with people that are going through these experiences themselves. It's not angel investors or anything like that. It is New Orleanians that are finding their path to liberation. And I just hope that I could be a voice on city council to uplift that fight and to continue the work. Even if I don't get elected, I'm going to continue to keep fighting for it. If I do get elected, I need y'all to keep fighting for it for me and hold me accountable to it. Because at the end of the day, I am embedded in these groups, whether that's through membership, whether that's through financial support, or whether that's through just keeping informed. And I think it's important for all of us right now in this moment to get politically organized, join membership groups, stay active in your neighborhood, in your community, in your church, wherever you exist. And I just hope that I can be, a continued fighter for all these causes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob. You heard it.
And I'm out of water.
Wow.
So.
Thank you.
But I'm Bob Murrell for
Bob
District
Murrell.
A and for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.